Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of This is HCD. In this episode, I sit down with Tanuj Shah, a UX entrepreneur and founder of Build UX, a platform that's redefining how designers create personas, journey maps, and other key UX artifacts. We talk a lot about the broken UX process in many organizations, and the challenges of tool overload and how buildux.com is streamlining research and design workflows with automation and collaboration. If you've ever struggled with slow UX documentation, or scattered insights, or even getting stakeholders aligned, this episode is just for you, because in it we cover why UX artifacts should be live, collaborative, and integrated into product development. We talk about how tools like persona mapping, heuristic evaluation, and feature prioritization can be automated. We talk about the risks of fast UX documentation and how to maintain research integrity. We talk about the future of UX tools, AI, and workflow integrations. Now, if you're a UX designer, a researcher, or product leader, you don't want to miss this episode. It's fantastic. Now, also check out the buildux.com website, and there's a link below for special discounts for Build UX, especially for listeners of this podcast. It's a great one. Let's jump straight in. Hey Tanuj, great to have you on the podcast. And maybe we'll start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from and what you do.
All right. So my name is Tanuj Shah, and I've been a UX entrepreneur for like over 15 years. So my education is user experience design. I started a services company, and it's called User Facet, and I've been running it for 15 years. And that apart, recently I ventured into creating tools for user experience designers, and it's called Build UX. And yeah, I'm from Bangalore. It's called the Garden City of India. You have all tall trees around, and you get some of the finest dosas in the world just around
Absolutely.
where I stay.
I know what dosas are because we've discussed it actually in the prelude to this. Dosas are rice. Is that right? Like a rice-based
Yes.
crepe.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to take a trip to I'm into my food, as people can probably tell from my chubby cheeks and my big belly. But I'll have to take a trip to Bangalore someday. I'd love to go and visit.
You're invited.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. All expenses paid as well.
100%. For the dosa, at least.
Yeah. Well, look, let's start off. We connected, total disclaimer, we connected like I do with a lot of people. I try products out, I try services out, and I got in touch. I said, hey, listen, look, I really like what you're doing here. I'd be interested in having a conversation. And you responded to me a couple of days later saying, hey, I'm the CEO of the business. Build UX was a really great experience for me using it, and I can see the value in what you're trying to do. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit more around the origination of this and what value that you're hoping to bring to the broader design community. So Build UX, where and what is the value that you're aiming to give to designers around the world?
Sure. So firstly, thanks for being a great user of Build UX and working with it. So as I told you, I've been an entrepreneur in the UX space for over a decade now, and I've provided services to top companies around the world. What I have seen is the user experience function is kind of broken. And there are three major issues that I've been seeing, and those are the ones I'm trying to fix. So the first one is that user experience design is not just about designing user interfaces, and a lot of time is spent on it. And when you look at other processes like creating personas, journey maps, behavioral maps, day in life of, competitive analysis, information architecture, service design blueprint, all these are amazing processes, but they take a long time. Like even just the act of creating the output takes a long time, right? Like you could be creating personas in Figma, and that's open canvas. You have to think about the layout. You have to think about the icons that go in it. So it's a lot of work beyond just creating that artifact. There's a lot of cognitive load. So we are trying to create tools that make it much faster. So these are tailor-made tools to just say create personas, tailor-made tools to just create maps, like journey maps, behavioral maps, persona maps, to conduct usability reviews on screens, right? Like heuristic evaluation. So you have these tailor-made tools for that. The second big issue that we see is that most of these outputs are shared during meetings with stakeholders, right? You meet them, you show your personas or you show your journey maps. But if you see how Figma changed the whole landscape, right? Like you have live and collaborative designs and design reviews. So anybody can just open a link, see what's the latest update on designs, make comments, work on it before the next meeting. It's the exact same thing we are trying to do with Build UX, right? All of these tools for each of these processes are all live and collaborative. So everybody can participate. They can be well prepared before the meeting. So your iterations are much better. And everybody understands what you're thinking about the user or what you're finding about the user or what everybody on the team thinks about the user, right? So everybody gets involved. The third thing is, we see we don't see the UX outputs be a part of accountability, right? By that, what I mean is that we do all this work, we create these great outputs, but then they just end up as PDF files and emails, right? Just biting dust. So what needs to happen is in your product, if you ever when you have a feature, you should be able to track it back not just to the product roadmap. You should be able to track it back to user research or user understanding. It could be assumptions, it could be user understanding, whatever it is. You should be able to track it back to zero. So these artifacts need to become a part of product lifecycle, right? So these three things.
I love that because at the moment, I know, like, I've brought a couple of people into my business recently, and their comments are like, "Man, you use a lot of tools."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I do, yeah. And I take it as a badge of honor. And they were like saying it as something that was really negative. Like, I use lots of different tools for certain tasks. Is that a positive or negative, the fact that it's so distributed when you're working as a designer? What do you think?
I don't exactly know the tools that you use and what part you use it for. So if you could shed some light.
Yeah, I mean, like Figma, Dovetail for research. I use Descript for transcriptions, for anonymizing stuff. There's lots of other tools. Like I'm a big believer in like Smaply, are kind of like brothers in this podcast, and sisters as well, because there's lots of stuff in Smaply that I use for as a service designer. It just fills nearly all my requirements. So when you've got all of these different tools, what you're talking about there is integration back to, research tools. So is it a fair assumption that that's where you want to take Build UX? You want to take it right back to the origination of being able to use it as a research tool?
So the first part, like, you're using all of these tools and they're phenomenally good. They're solving one pain point at a time, right? Like you're doing your research in Dovetail, then you're using Descript for the transcripts and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. What we are trying to do is, if we can integrate all of these together, right? If we can make like a journey and these all become a part of it, and Build UX also is a part of it, right? Then the entire user experience practice becomes a part of the product lifecycle, right? You can go back after something is built, you can go back, trace its roots, and then you can now pivot. You can maybe change things, you understand new things, and it again goes back into the product. And again, so the whole life cycle, each of these products get deeply integrated into the product lifecycle. So to your point, yes, Build UX is aimed to become a part of the whole product lifecycle. For that, it will be integrated into everything, right? So you will be integrated into Azure DevOps, into Jira, and then maybe you're getting your data from testimonials, you're getting them from Descript or Dovetail and so on. So you're getting in and then you're getting it out, and it's a piece sitting there.
Yeah, okay. So with the existing tool that I've used, I remember commenting to myself that the speed of the creation process of things like behavioral mapping and different aspects like that, why do you think like, is there a risk there that if we generate these artifacts really quickly, that it can devalue the kind of the artifact itself? Like anyone can come along and just generate personas in a couple of clicks. Could it potentially be seen as devaluing the importance of research?
You tell me. Tell me something that, like, say you made these say you created these behavioral maps or personas, right?
Yeah.
So I have a few questions, right? Like, do you think they don't evolve over a period of time, and should they evolve? Like, if they should evolve, do you have the capabilities and current tools to keep evolving it?
Yeah.
Right? So what we are trying to do with speed over here is we are trying to remove the cognitive load. It's just basically a tool that's tailored for that, right? So
Yeah.
you could create an invoice in Figma, you could create an invoice in a Word document or in an Excel sheet, but that you have to think so much. You have to think about the layout, you have to think where you have to put in your items and so on and so forth. But you have these phenomenal tools where you just feed in your items and stuff like that, and it gives you a beautiful looking output. That's exactly what we are trying to do. That's where we are trying to save the time. So the information doesn't change, the research doesn't change. You always have to talk to your customers, but the speed at which you can share this information changes.
Yeah.
So if you know something today, I would love if my stakeholder also was aware of it. The sooner the better, instead of waiting for a meeting and creating a beautiful output and going there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So maybe you'll tell me a little bit more around the structure of Build UX. Like, so most tools that you use, like say Canva is a very, very popular tool out there, and you can pull things into a canvas and create them. Within Build UX, the terminology, that the noun used is the frameworks. So you mentioned there about having it as a suite of things that you can do. Lots of different artifacts can get generated. Is my understanding correct? Like, you've got things in there like mapper and personas and reviewer and stuff.
Correct.
Tell us what the existing product can do for designers.
Sure.
What features that are in there? Because I know I've used it to create some behavioral maps, and I thought it was really, really cool. And I was able to generate my exports of my anonymized data from Dovetail, which did not make it very easy, by the way, Dovetail team, if you're listening. And I dropped it into this, and I wanted to see what it was going to create. And to my surprise, it actually created something that was quite accurate. And I was able to tweak it. It got me to 50, 60%. So personas is obviously one of the big things that when you look at your LinkedIn and you look at your website, you talk about this stuff an awful lot more. So first of all, tell us about the frameworks, and two, how are you generating insights on what to create next?
Sure. So we started with the Mapper framework, and that was our flagship product. That was the first tool we came out with, so it could do persona maps, right? Over a period of time, like after 6 months, we started releasing the other tools. The second one was Reviewer, so where you could put in screenshots of your product or anything, any UI that you're working on, and just click on top of the screen and create issues, send them to Jira. The developer fixes it, they send it back to the Reviewer tool, and then you say marked as done, and it's resolved everywhere in the product lifecycle. Right. So, and then came personas, right? Like, people said, oh, we can make beautiful persona maps, but still people want those long format documents with all the details in it and all the story behind every persona. So we came up with the persona framework. So you have these cards, you have goals, pain points. You can just move them just by dragging, and everything rearranges itself. So you never have to think about the layout. They're just cards, and they take a shape as you are building them. So there is not much thought in thinking about colors and the layout, etc. You have a long paragraph, it just makes it taller and it moves everything around, and so on and so forth. And you have to add something in between. You don't have to destroy the thing. You just add something in between, and the other things move around. So this is the third one. And then we have the red root matrix, which is about feature prioritization. So you put in all your features against the most used to the least used, and against most used by many and most used by few. And you have this matrix come up, a red root matrix for feature prioritization. So Yeah, that's what we call as frameworks. And where we are headed is we are going to keep creating more and more and more of these frameworks, right? Like competitive analysis. So instead of having competitive analysis happen in 5 weeks, you just do it in a couple of minutes. Before you go for coffee, just say, these are the 10 websites I want to thoroughly study. And it brings in all the screenshots, does all the, heavy lifting, and then
Mm,
you're ready to start tweaking it as you want.
nice.
Those kind of things. And apart from that, just one thing is that even when you look at Mapper or something, just one tool, we are trying to create a 360-degree ecosystem around it. By that, what I mean is you can import your transcripts. You can just import 100 interviews. That's like 20 pages each. You're looking at 2,000 pages. You just import them and it creates the mapper for you, or you can tweak it. You can find, but you can do a lot of analysis automated. And then you can have personas. Like some companies have 450 personas, trust me, and you can just import them in one click and it creates all your personas and all the mappers with the data in it. Strictly
Wow.
restricted to the document you just inserted, nothing from the internet. Um, so
Right.
for each tool, we are trying to do a 360, and then you can select every particular attribute in a mapper or in a persona and say, hey, this needs to be built. So it goes forward into your DevOps, right? That kind of stuff.
Okay. So I'm starting to get a full kind of picture of
Where
where,
we are going.
yeah, you're creating features for the entire UX process, so to speak. So like, different tools along the way, and you're helping digitize those and speed them up and integrate and so forth. Like pretty much as I was hoping it would be is kind of what it is like. So how do you define the new initiatives that you create? Because it looks like you're creating stuff very quickly. Is that fair to say? Like you're churning. I think Red Root Matrix is a new thing, is it? I did
Correct.
see that there the last time I logged in.
Correct.
And I'm logged in
Yes.
here as I'm doing this interview. Haven't looked at and doing it. And
Right.
Reviewer is new as well, is it?
No, the reviewer is the second one. So it was launched um, sometime like April or May last year in
Okay.
2024. So it was the second one, and then we came up with personas towards the end of the year, and then um, around the same time was Red Root Matrix or early 2025.
Right. Right. Very, very nice. So talk to me about like, new features, because like, big fans of friends of the podcast, Smapley, like, Mark, who I
Yeah.
work with. Over the years, I've become like what's known as like a super user of the product, where I tell them all the time, this is not good. I like this. I don't like this. Is that something that you're weaving, that kind of quick feedback model into the process? Um, like, I'd love to understand the origination of ideas and features that the team at Build UX are using to identify those new features of value for the customers.
Sure, sure. So we are UX professionals and we know the importance of talking to customers.
Yeah.
And we have been, so that's what we have been doing from the very beginning. Like it was open for UX professionals only. It was a beta release. We continued speaking with them. So after the initial release, right? Like when we release, say, the mapper or we release the reviewer, after that, nothing that's built into the product is without user feedback. Every single feature, right? Like connecting it to Azure DevOps or Jira, or like having importing transcripts or this quantity of transcripts, all of that came in from the end users who have been using the tool. So as more and more people adopt more and more tools, we keep getting the feedback and we keep pivoting the product or keep adding features based on what's being requested.
Yeah. So what are people using? Like the UX community, like I guess I would have seen myself in the UX community maybe 10 or 15 years ago when it was starting to kind of bubble up. But like once it started getting more browser based, I kind of pulled out and I was starting working more in service design. But what are the main tools of a UX designer at the moment? Figma is obviously the one that everyone is just going to start shouting at their iPhones or their phones here, Jerry, it's a bloody Figma. But what are the other tools that they're using? Like, and I'd love to understand that, and also who are your competitors.
Sure. we see a lot of use of Dovetail. I think Dovetail is definitely coming up. We even in product management we see a lot of use of Miro. It was not the same. I
Oh,
in fact haven't used Miro in between just once for journey mapping. I had created a whole Miro board,
yeah,
but apart from that, not. I've not been using Miro, but a lot of customers now are on Miro.
yeah,
And likewise, as I said, Dovetail user interviews is the next closer one. And then there are these a couple of new ones, but most of them are focusing on the UX research space, which is helping you understand your customer better.
okay,
That's where a lot of new products are being seen, right? Like use of AI to understand your customer
sure.
and stuff like that. We are in the phase after that, which is how do you create great outputs for whatever you want to create from your understanding? Do you want to create personas or journeys? Make them here, make them very, very fast over here, keep them live and collaborative. Yep.
It's funny you say Miro. Miro did sponsor the podcast for like 6 months the year before last, and I've been over at their offices. And since
Nice.
then, like I was a huge user of Miro, and I still am. I love it. But
Oh,
one of the things that I find it doesn't scale as nicely as some of the other tools. Like it's great for the low fidelity stuff, the great collaborations, and having like a whiteboard shared space for dumping things on and creating alignment and stuff. But when you want to get further down the fidelity train, so to speak, um, it doesn't scale as nicely. Like it doesn't integrate. The maps don't speak to each other, and that's what
mhm.
my kind of hopes for a lot of the tools. Like you mentioned there about integrations and stuff, but being able to have a kind of a story that has a beginning, middle, and an end within the product is something that I don't see very well executed across a lot of products. Looking at Build UX, is that in place at the moment? Like when you create personas, does it sit within, like if you change a persona's behavioral attributes, is that cascading into the other frameworks within the tool currently? No,
100% it does
oh, it
as
is.
we speak. So
Okay.
if you created personas, what you do is when you have a mapper, you
Yeah.
just say create mappers from these personas.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next time, say you change something in your personas, all you need to do is go back and regenerate it. Like it won't do it on itself. You just click regenerate. So it picks the latest data. So it's not overriding without you commanding it, but it's fully integrated. And that's how even the red root matrix is created. So the red root matrix is created based on the product features that are either in the mapper or in the personas. So you're choosing a persona set. You can create it from scratch or you can create it from mappers.
Oh, okay, okay, I get it now. So I can see the value that this would give design teams. So, like, again, folks, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, Jerry, we're on our phones, we're out walking, we're out running, like I encourage you to go and, I think you do a free account, don't you? You can have a free account. You can
Oh
click in
yeah.
and have a look. And you're also, Tanuj hasn't mentioned, but he's given discounts to the listeners of the podcast where you can go in and get discounts and so forth. So check out the links below on that. But if you are listening along and you're trying to understand, when you get home, check out buildux.com and have a look at it. Like, I guess that's Tanuj is on the podcast trying to promote Build UX. I'm a user of Build UX and trying to understand the future of it, because in my mind, and probably your minds as well, listeners, you want to know, is there a future in this product? Is this something that you could actually use to adopt in how you're currently working? What value could it give you? And I can see great value in tools like this, and Build UX has become part of my workflow over the last couple of weeks, and I'm really enjoy it. Um, Tanuj, talk to me a little bit more around the red root matrix, okay? Because I'll be honest with you, I've heard it. I don't really understand too much about what it is. I'd love to learn a little bit more while I'm on the call with you.
Sure, sure. So firstly, thanks. Thanks for being a user again. So come,
No problem.
yeah. So coming to a red root matrix, right? So it's a 4 by 4 grid. So it's like
Yeah,
16 quadrants,
yeah,
right? And then in one dimension, what you have is the frequency of use. And in one dimension, you have how many people use it or how many personas use it, right? So you could have a feature
Okay.
like importing transcripts and build UX,
Yeah.
right? So you have this feature and say it's being used by everyone or it's being used by few. Say it's not being used by product managers, it's not being used by a couple of people, then it falls into the quadrant of used by few. But
Yeah.
used by few, how frequently? So is it still a very frequent activity? So then it would be on the top line, used
Yeah.
by few, but very frequently. So
Okay.
that's how you create a matrix. And now what you can do is for each of these product features, you can say what personas are using it. So you don't let it stay at the level of saying, oh, used by a few, but who few? We don't know who few, right? So, oh, it's being used by UX researchers, it's being
Mhm.
used by UX architects, and it's not, and so you can basically see the whole picture of what features, how frequently, used by who.
Yeah.
And you can
That's
even
fine.
do it for subcomponents, right? Like you can do it for subcomponents. So a product might not have just like 16 and maybe in each card you can put like say 10 features. So it's not, sometimes you have even 500 features, so you can keep creating different matrix for each parts of your flow.
Very, very, very nice. I am going to check that out because I think I've got something that I could use that for, to help visualize some stuff. In your
Sure.
mind, visualization is really at the core of a lot of design processes, mainly because it creates alignment within teams. In your perspective, or in your experience, so to speak, uh, are these tools that you're working on at the moment, like how important is that alignment within organizations that have UX teams? Talk to me about the importance of alignment.
Sure. It's very close to my heart, and it's a very important question for what we are trying to build. Um, So if you typically went out to a lot of product teams and picked out like key stakeholders, like your product managers, your UX designers, your executives, and you picked up a particular feature, and then you ask them, whom are you building this for, and how important is it for people? You'll most likely get very different answers from each one of them. And even like just top executives, you would find very different answers. What it comes to say is that maybe some are building a plane, somebody is building a train, somebody is building a ship, and somebody is building a cycle. They're all building vehicles. They're all building vehicles, but they're all building different things because they don't know whom they are building it for, how it's going to be a part of their end user's experience.
Mm-hmm.
So alignment becomes crucial, right? And that's what these tools are for. They're extremely visual in nature. So you just anybody, anytime. So they're extremely visual. They are collaborative and they are live. So
Okay.
anybody, anywhere can just pull up a persona map, a behavioral map, a persona document, and see what the user actually wants and where that particular feature requirement is coming from. So they know in what context, for whom are they building it for. Even like you take a process like day in life, right?
Yeah.
These days most products don't I mean the top of line products get 2 to 3 hours usage every day, and most of the products get like a couple of minutes or maybe 30-40 minutes of usage a day. So if you don't know in what context at what time of the day is your product going to be a part of them, your marketing is going to be weak, your development is going to be weak, you're going to be spending time on features that are unnecessary and stuff like that. So all of these artifacts uh, become the bottom line for alignment, and that's what we are trying to build.
Okay, excellent. So look, Tanuj, you did mention like we've got some discounts. I'm going to put links to those into the show notes.
Sure.
Um, if people want to follow you and ask questions, what's the best way for people to follow Tanuj Shah versus Build UX? We're going to put links to all the Build UX stuff in the descriptions. But what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Just search me, Tanuj Shah, and maybe just put Build UX along with it, and you'll easily find me. Just connect. I love to connect with UX folks and anyone who is interested in having a conversation. So get in touch, and I would love to hear from you. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll put links to those. Listen, look, Tanuj, thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are with the team over there in Build UX in Bangalore. If you did mention you're going to Fig Jam in San
Yes.
Francisco, it's a couple of weeks, probably March, isn't it? Sometime March, April.
Yeah.
So if people are going along to Fig Jam and they want to kind of catch up with Tanuj, message him on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'd love to have a coffee with people.
Oh yeah, and I'll show you some cool stuff and some things which are still work in progress. So you'll see some amazing stuff, and I can share some amazing outputs with you in seconds that you can take and look at them yourself. And I would love to get in touch.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and not just that, I'm going to be there at Dovetail, the Inside Out conference. We are going to be at the UXR conference 2025. That's also in San Francisco. So a couple of events to catch up.
Yeah, for sure. Tanuj, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Jerry.